Hello, hello. So welcome back. Today we have book 36 for you. So what you got for us, Chris?
Well, I've got to start off a new advertisement for our Year of Magical Learning website that we're launching for people to take their own Year of Magical Learning journey. And here's a quick promo. Apparently there's a misspelling that I got to fix, but create your own story, Year of Magical Learning, what you do, read 52 books in 52 weeks, write 52 reflections, and we'll turn it into a book for you. So take a visit on yourmagicallearning.net. But beyond that, though, back to our actual reason why we're here, is book 36. It's called On Writing. It's a memoir of the craft by the author Stephen King.
Nice.
I assume both of you guys are pretty familiar with Stephen King and a lot of his works, right?
I know of him. I just don't watch, and I just don't watch his movie from the book that he wrote.
Gotcha. So the reflection title for today is something interesting I learned that I later learned in Bird by Bird as well, but I learned it first from Stephen King, so I'm going to give him credit for it. But start with the character and a scenario, and then use your imagination. So what I mean by that is around the time that I was about like 3/4 through writing the book, the I Can't Imagine book, that I published about a year ago now. And probably like 6 months ago now, I guess. I don't know why, when I first started that project, I had no idea. I didn't do any like research or training or like go look for any path, like instruction from another writer. I just had a story to tell and I wanted to tell it. So I just went to town on it. However, as I was getting close to finishing, and I was reading more and more, and I was looking for new stuff to check out. I was like, I guess maybe, as we talked about yesterday with the last episode on the Atomic Habits one about making it an identity, I was like, well, if I'm going to call myself a writer, I should probably start actually studying like writing.
How to write.
Like that. So I pulled up this book On Writing by Stephen King, and it was kind of like a part memoir. First part of it was about his life, and then the second part was about how he does what he does. And I thought it was a good time for me to start to try to learn that from some of the best. So as I wrote in the reflection here, the first big aha I heard from Stephen King on the actual writing process is he hates adverbs, like hates them with a passion. Like, I mean, he mentioned it like just countless times throughout the story. And he was like, you suck as a writer, basically, if you write in adverbs. I barely even know what an adverb is. I had to go Google it. So, I hope I don't write in adverbs, but anybody know off the top of their head, adverb?
First thing I did was look it up. I feel like I'm in like 8th grade, 7th grade English right now.
Yeah.
No, I didn't even know that it was a thing, but apparently writers, don't like other writers that write adverbs. But the real thing that I learned from this whole entire story was I was kind of blown away. When I first started going through this book with him, I don't know. I'll ask you guys, what do you think Stephen King's process was? Like, how do you think he writes? I mean, the guy's prolific, right? He writes, just churns out book after book after book, and these aren't short books either. Some of them are 300, 400, 500 page long books, So like, what do you think Stephen King's process is of how he writes just book after book after book?
I don't know why my instinct says he does not. He probably starts with either a scene or the ending, and then he works backwards or works like in like different ways to get there. It doesn't like start front to back. That's my guess.
Got it.
My guess is he's just imaginative. He just writes it. Just everything comes to him naturally and just writes it out.
And then I'm gonna guess too, he probably maybe gets very isolated.
He gets very what?
He's very isolated when he does it.
Well, yeah, well, that for sure. I mean, I don't think you can write around. I mean, I'd be curious to hear the author that says, yeah, go into the noisiest place you possibly can find.
Well, not that. I mean, like in a cabin, snowy cabin somewhere by himself, or I don't know.
No, he writes at his desk at his home every single day. Actually, a part of his memoir, the guy was like a cokehead. I mean, he used to do like lines of coke and
maybe that's it.
And yeah, right. he said there was books that he wrote in the I think it was the 80s or maybe the late 70s, the 80s or something like that, into the early 90s or whatever, that he doesn't even remember writing any of the book. He just is like, I was so drunk and cooked out of my mind every night, like I was like, this is crazy. But yeah, that was
I
something.
mean, I think maybe that's what makes him famous. And once he become famous, it's easier to piggyback on what you've done already.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that time and time again with guys like Eminem. I remember his story when he got addicted to painkillers, and he was like, I can't. He was like, I couldn't even think about going out on stage without. It just becomes like they feel like they can't be creative without it, but they weren't. That's not how their whole journey started. Anyway, I'm on a tangent now. So long story short, what I was blown away by to learn about his process, Blake, I was kind of with you a little bit more in line of, I feel like he had some sort of a plot in mind, maybe an ending or maybe some story framework that he was like, look, this person's going to go to here and do this. And then these people are going, this is the big climax. And then I'm going to have an ending that's going to look like this or something like that. Like some through line plot, that he had in mind, that he was just really imaginative and, thought of these crazy scenarios. Well, what it turns out was he doesn't do any of that. He has no plot. He starts with no plot most of the time. He just has a character. He thinks of like, who True is, right? And he's like, I'm gonna invent True in my mind. Like, what is this guy's life? What does he do? And then he just gives him a scenario, and then he lets it play from there. That's it. Like so, like the movie or the book, Carrie. The one with the girl that's the prom queen that gets the blood poured on her and stuff like that. Like he just thinks of that character Carrie, and he's like, she's in a high school, that's it. And then he's like, I just let my imagination take it from there. And he's like, that's the beauty of it. It's like he doesn't even know what he's writing, so like his readers and his audience doesn't know what they're gonna get to, because he didn't even know it as he was writing it. Like it was kind of unfolding every single day as he sat down to write it at his computer, and he just used his imagination. I don't know. I for some reason that was a revelation to me at that time, because I've never been a fiction writer. Obviously, I've never tried that before in my life. But I guess it makes sense really when you think about it. I mean, it's not much different than like an actor, when doing like method acting of, who is, so and so character, like how do they got to get in their mindset, all that other stuff. And anyway, long story short, to tie it back into values and purpose and all that other stuff, I thought it was very on par with what life is all about. We're just kind of characters given scenarios every single day, and got to use our imagination how we get through it, and it's kind of up to you what story you want to tell. So thought that was a kind of an interesting way to tie it all back together to this year of magical learning. And yeah, love to get your guys' thoughts.
Well, that surprises me.
What? Oh, that's how he writes.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that being an interesting way to write. I think coming up with like a character person and then just kind of running with it. How you can make a good story that all makes sense, with not just starting with a character, I think is pretty. You must be pretty skilled at. I couldn't do that very well. I feel like mine would be all over the place and it wouldn't, be tied together. So, but I do think that's a cool idea, just to be like. And I mean, I sometimes do it. I see someone, I'm like, I wonder what their life is like when they're at home, like by themselves. Like, what's a day like in their shoes? So, sometimes kind of funny to think about or interesting. So, but not what I expected.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess the theory, the idea, of life is always a story, right? And we can kind of make whatever we want to make out of it. Love to get your guys' thoughts on how you feel like that applies to yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, are you just the Blake character? Are you just the True character? And like what, like, is there some process? Everybody always talks about the process, like, here, you got to go to college, get a job, get promoted, do all this other stuff. And there's some strict, start to end, you have a great life, have a couple kids, go buy a house, like whatever it may be. And then, but what knowing that the greatest writers of all time and the people that are the best storytellers of all time, and tapping into the human emotion, like what does that mean to you guys, I guess, in terms of how you would apply that to your own life?
Well, I think process can be good. I think it's not saying, okay, this is the process that everyone is telling me to do, and necessarily following that. I think it's coming up with your own process. I think there's a balance between just winging it and having processes and structure and kind of creating what it is, what your own is, and what you want, and how you want to get there. And so I don't know. That's kind of my initial thought.
What do you got, Drew?
So I wanna comment something on what Blake said real quick. I disagree with what he said. In terms of what he said, if he were to start doing it, he would be all over the place. I disagree with that statement. With me personally, kind of understanding how the mind works, and that's kind of my areas of interest. I think because we have a mind that's been passed down for millions of years, we have a very, very good ability to detect patterns and see similarities. And so when you create a character in your own mind, you're gonna make it so it makes sense. It will make sense because your mind is in tune for patterns. It's patterns recognition. That's what we're good at. And so I think regardless of what you can come up with, whatever you do, it's not going to defy the laws of physics or anything like that. It's not going to be all over the place just because you think it will be. It won't be, just because you're going to have to picture a character in a place, and what he or she does, to me, it will be logical because they're going to be a pattern, because that's what our minds does. So, I disagree with you that I think if you do it, it may not be as elaborate as Stephen King would be, but because you're new to it, but at the same time, whatever you produce is still be logical,
That's fair
right?
point.
And so the second point I want to make is, I think that's is also a pivot in our way of living. If you live to a point where you say, well, I have to do this, I have to do that, it has to be completely thought out or laid out, then essentially you're just being a cog in the wheel, right? A cog in the machine. You just follow the same thing everybody told you have to be. You say, hey, you're not a writer, Chris. You're just a salesperson, or you're a tech person, True, or whatever. You've been put into a certain things that you are basically told to be that thing, and you morph yourself to that. But if you say to yourself that, hey, I let things gravitate towards the values that I enjoy doing, the activities and the connections of the people that I want to be around me, I think you're gonna gravitate towards the thing that you are made to be. Like I said before, a beaver must dam, right?
Right.
A writer must write, a painter must paint. And so if you allow yourself to gravitate to say, okay, I am True, or I'm Chris, or I'm Blake, let it gravitate to wherever I need to be happy. I think it will gravitate by itself if you don't hold on to that rein of pulling yourself back to fit into the round peg of society, or whatever it is that you call that. It's just because it is conditioning of society. It's putting you into a shape that is not I guess compatible with your being. And so I think it's important to realize that if you want to be happy, let be what may be. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it's really interesting when we're talking about kind of like generations of minds and how people think and the patterns. And I think too, it's like interesting to think about a writer. I think a lot of like kind of plots and stories and how things played out. It's kind of like you see kind of the same thing over with different characters. It's like there's only so many kind of, oh, this person double crossed this person, or oh, this person really, the best friend was really the murderer. Or
Right.
I think to be able to come up with ideas outside of that that's imagination. And then also when you talked about doing things that's not what society tells you to do, I think what you're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to get married, you're supposed to do this, and it's kind of too, it's passed down a lot of times through family and ways of thinking. Like being able to sometimes look at that and say, maybe there's a different path that I can go that fits me and what I want to do. I think, and people are going to give you, probably your family, you're going to get pushback maybe, but I think it's important to explore those things. Something I've actually been thinking about of my family and my dad and things that I do and how I think and kind of my way of thinking. And you sometimes you got to break certain habits and trends in order to evolve. you know, family life, and you know, so
Right.
something that's my thoughts.
Right. Right.
It-
It's you can't be pushing it towards something that is predetermined by someone, a group of people. And that's essentially how we are basically default to when we grow up. So we have to take a step back and say, well, is this what I want? And use our happiness as a gauge and say, okay, is this the direction I want to be in? Is this, let's say I want to go and party every night. Is this what I want? For somebody, that's fine. For some other people, it's not. But to say, hey, everybody should be drinking and partying every night to have a life before it all is gone, well, that's their opinion. It's not universal truth. And so that's something we have to make sure that we ask ourselves, is this what we want? And is this going to make me happy? Do I like these activities or I don't?
I think that stepping back and taking an analysis and actually like analyzing it and saying, wait a minute, I'm going to look at what I'm doing, and I'm going to look at, I think that it's difficult, I think, to do, and say, see some areas where you're like, maybe this isn't the best. Maybe I should be doing something differently. Maybe I've been doing this pattern over and over again, or something needs to change. I think to be able to step back and look at yourself and analyze that, I don't think a lot of people do that. And I think it really takes some openness, some vulnerability to look at that and say, yeah, is this what I want to be doing? Is this what makes me happy? Is this the right thing? Is this,
yeah. We have to look at it from an objective point of view to get a real readings on the heading, because if we become so attached to some method or side of whatever that we're being told and be defensive, we don't think about the logic of it. We say, well, yeah, I believe in this, so I always believe in it. I'm not gonna question it right now, right? And because if you don't think objectively, then you're always going to be blinded by what you don't want to see.
Did we get sidetracked, Chris?
What's that?
Did we go on a tangent?
Did we go on a tangent there?
No, not at all. Actually, I think you guys make like great points. I think Blake, to your point, and True's at the same time. I think it always, like, as we always have talked about, it always goes back to your values and knowing yourself first and foremost. Like if you're gonna be Stephen King and you're gonna do Carrie, you got to know what Carrie cares about. You got to know who Carrie is, and to know who Carrie is, you got to know what Carrie values. So to write the scenarios, how Carrie's going to do what she's going to do, and whenever she's in that scenario, you got to know what's important to that person, like deep at their core, and I think that goes for everybody, whether you're a character in a story or whether you're a character in your own life, like it's really, to your exact point of like stepping back and evaluating everything. There's no rhyme or reason as to why all three of us are on this call right now today talking about this book and doing the Year of Magical Learning stuff, right? Like that came from values, and that came from evaluating your life and doing what you say you want to do. Like I don't know what's going to be next in my own personal journey, but I know where I'm going to go look to, and in the scenario, I'm going to go look to my values and figure out what's the next activity that I'm going to do that it expresses that, and then it'll make sense to me. It won't make sense to somebody else, and they won't know what's coming next, but it'll make sense to me at the end of the day. When I look back on it, you're going to go, well, yeah, the Year of Magical Learning makes a ton of sense. Chris values learning. He values challenging himself. He values all this other stuff. And you're going to go, oh yeah, I should have seen that coming, but I didn't see that coming. Like, where did that come from?
And no one does, right? And like a lot of people who've done something, you ask them, 10 years ago, did you see that this is what you wanted to build? So
no.
To me, honestly, most people don't know. And if they tell you they do, they're lying. Because like what we do up to today is like, well, we don't know. We just doing things we like to do, and eventually it becomes this and that and the other. It's just the way it works. So you have to let it I guess
let the story unfold. Yeah.
Right. Let it unfold. Exactly.
Yeah. Chris, let me ask you, when you talked about kind of what you want to always do next and you don't know what it's going to be, but you go back to your values, you feel like, I feel like that is to stop and think about that, I think is not something people regularly do. You might do it, here and there. Does it second nature? Is that what you always do right now? Do you feel like you've done that long enough that or is it something you still have to like consciously really take the time to stop, think about that, and to decide what you do next, or has it become more second nature right now?
No, I have to consciously do it every single day. Like it's a part of the writing and reflection process. It's a part of, this is what the year of magical learning is. It's having this conversation and remembering like, oh yeah, this is why values are so important. And I need to make sure that I always am seeing them and looking at them, understanding them, evaluating, do they apply to what I'm doing in my life or not? You know, like, I mean, this is an ongoing, forever evolving process. Like it's not, once again, Stephen King and just like yourself, like, you know, you don't wake up every single day going, oh yeah, I know what my plot's going to be. I'm going to die when I'm 85 years old with, you know, 7 grandkids and, you know, 3 children and a couple properties and, you know, happy wife next to me. Like, I don't know what the hell's going to happen with my life, you know, like nobody can predict the ending of the plot and like the, you know, the climaxes and not throughout the course of your life. So I don't know. I say to your exact question, like, yeah, for sure, you're evaluating constantly, right? I mean, that's how you have to do it. Like Stephen King can't sit down and write every single day about Carrie without making sure and checking with what he's about to write in his mind has any correlation to what she cares about, right?
Makes sense.
Awesome. Yep. Any final thoughts, guys? Any other thoughts?
Let it be what it may be. Let the story unfold.
Exactly. So the question for everybody following along, it would be, what would happen if you stopped following, you know, the process and started using your imagination and you know, living your values, everything you do. So
you might like your life.
Yeah, it certainly makes it more fun. You never know what's coming next. Like, I mean, that's the fun of it, right?
Right.
Awesome. All right. Well, good discussion, fellas, and we will see you all tomorrow.
Yep. Sounds good. See ya.